One of the real areas of disruption in AI has been autonomous vehicles. And just before we started recording, I was saying that I have a Tesla in LA where I live, and it's staggering that I can get in the car, press a button, and drive 2.5 hours to Joshua Tree without having to touch the wheel or the pedals. Now, driving, I think, is one of the biggest employers in the world, like as a profession.
I mean, we've got 9.5 million drivers and couriers on our platform. We are the largest organizer of flexible work around the world. And I think the second largest workforce is the Chinese army.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a big group of folks that we've organized.
And statistically, there's less accidents in an autonomous Tesla than there is if a human drives it. So it's safer for my car to drive itself statistically than for me to drive it. That's true, right? That the autonomous driving is currently safer.
That's true. So Waymos are safer. And then now you are a backup to the Tesla, right, as a human being. So I've got a Tesla as well. And once in a while it disengages and I've got to disengage. So it's not necessarily the pure autonomous agent that's better than humans, but definitely the autonomous agent with a human backup. No question that's better than the pure human.
And we can't be far away from it just being...
I mean, Waymo's there already, right? You live in LA.
I've tried it.
They've got the Waymos. We work with them in Austin, in Atlanta. And by all accounts, Waymo drivers are safer than human beings. And that's going to be true of AV all over the world. You know, there are 1 million deaths from driving every year in the world. In the US, it's between 35,000 and 40,000 auto fatalities. So to the extent that these autonomous agents and drivers can be better than humans, and they will be better than humans over a period of time, there's a real return on human life as a result of this.
Those 9 million drivers, couriers that you have will be out of work, conceivably, talking about being honest about the situation.
Yeah, I think, again, it goes to physical AI as well, right? So I think 20 years from now, you can imagine that those 9 million will be 20 million AVs maybe. But we have time between now and then, partially because we don't operate in the virtual world, right? We operate in the physical world. You have to get the regulations up. You have to build the cars. You have to build the sensor stacks. The models have to get there. So there is time between now and then. But you can imagine the majority of our trips being fulfilled by robots of some kind, probably not 10 years from now, but you go 15, 20 years from now, you're going to start getting there.
What do the 9 million people do?
I don't know. Now, we are expanding the kind of work that's available on the platform, partially as a result of it, right? We used to be the only work is driving. Now there's delivering. You can have shoppers as well. I think it'll be a little while at least before you get AI shoppers. And now actually we have a team called Uber AI Solutions that allows people to train these same agents and train AI agents and AI models and do all kinds of knowledge-based work on their phone as well to kind of extend the kind of work that we offer humans on our platform and different opportunities for them to make money. So we are extending the platform, and then the question is how much of the platform gets automated and what's the velocity at which we can extend our platform into other kinds of work versus the velocity of automation. I can't tell you which is going to go faster.
Hand on heart, though, it does appear that unemployment is going to be significantly increased in a world of AI, especially we just imagine this sort of continual rate of improvement. I just can't.
You would have to, unless, again, historically in societies, new kinds of jobs have come up.
Knowledge jobs, physical jobs.
Yeah, I mean,
but now we've disrupted both.
That's why there's a question here. And I do think there's a real question as to the ability of societies to retrain, the abilities of human beings to retrain themselves. AI is going to be a part of that. But the timing there, how fast is it going to go? It's a real question mark. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it's going to be a big issue in the next 5 years. But when you go 5+ years, it's going to become more of an issue for society at large.
It's interesting because I was thinking, putting two and two together about your father's journey of coming to the US, losing what he had, losing his job, and the loss of like meaning and purpose being really central to him. And I could see that basically from your face that I think what I interpreted from your face was that he struggled with, as any provider would, the loss of like meaning that comes with, because jobs aren't just about money. It's just, especially, they give you a sense of worth. And it's funny, I read a study many years ago that said when they looked at suicide letters specifically from men, I think it was an Australian study, in the suicide letters, that the sentiment was about not feeling worthful to your family.
Yeah.
And the extreme of that was, I think my family would actually now be better off without me.
Interesting.
And this kind of, I think is probably adjacent to this conversation around job displacement, which is where are we going to find our meaning in a world where the machines have now disrupted our intelligence and our muscles?
It's every universal income, basic income test has failed. The answer that you hear from folks is, well, the robots are going to do all the work. They're going to create utility. And so our work won't have to create utility. So people will just have money. But it goes to exactly what you're saying, which is every single test they've done. No, it's not 20, but they've done a couple of tests where certain section of the population, similar population gets income, certain section doesn't. And every time the ones who are getting income do worse in terms of outcomes because, well, we don't know the because. But I think the because is related to what you're saying, which is market forces kind of that force someone to work then create a perception of self-value. Succeeding, most people succeed. If they're driven to succeed, they will succeed. And as they succeed, it comes with a very, very deep and important feeling of I am creating value. I'm supporting my family. I'm building this incredible piece of art, et cetera. Whatever that value is to you and wherever that meaning comes from, I'm an incredible parent. That value is what keeps people going. And I don't think that, the government raining money down on society is going to help.
It's refreshing to hear your perspective on this because a lot of the time, you'll hear CEOs in the media just saying, it'll be fine, everyone's going to figure it out. And I think that's such a cop-out.
Historically, we have figured it out. So maybe they're right. But you have to ask whether they're giving you the real stuff or not.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I think, because I sometimes hear about private conversations, and the private conversations I hear about the sheer amount of disruption that they anticipate. And then when I see them on like CNBC or at Davos, it's everyone will be fine and figure it out. And I understand the incentive because if they were to start ringing the bell, it might hurt their own chance of like innovating and fundraising and all those things. But I think you sit at this sort of happy medium of being, as the CEO of Uber, you've got to pursue the opportunity and the technology. But on the other end, to be honest and say, listen, there's going to be big disruption and I don't know the answers.
Yeah. I remember you were talking about CNBC. A CNBC anchor once, we had an interview and afterwards she said, I really like you. You actually answer my questions. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I not supposed to? There's like the PR trading is always, if you get a bad question, don't answer the question, just pivot to something else. And for me, like I've sworn to myself, and Noah, who's up there, is probably going to kill me afterwards. It's just, I'm going to answer the question. I'm not going to do the BS. And again, I have to think the anchor knows what's happening. The audience knows what's happening. So I'm like, I'll answer the question. If it's a shitty question, I'll deal with it.
I actually don't like interviewing CEOs, which is funny because the name of the podcast. Because active CEOs...
Yeah, how did the because I looked before I came on. I'm like, I'm going to look up on the CEOs. And there aren't that many CEOs.
Well, if I looked at your diary, what would I find inside your diary? I would probably find you contending with being a father, your psychology. I might find some things in there about your health. I can see you're a guy that goes to the gym.
Yeah.
And I think it's all interlinked. I think for you to be an exceptional CEO, you probably think a lot about your past, your childhood, your health, your how to optimize and all these things. And so honestly, you can't do a podcast like this for 20 years and just hit the same thing every day.
Yeah.
You need to be
totally
I need to be intellectually stimulated. And you and me are both multifaceted creatures, I guess. So that's why it's evolved.
Until we become AIs.
Until we become AIs. Yeah. Just closing off on that then. What can we do about this from an AI AV perspective? Is it the government's responsibility? Is it collective action?
So one is, I do think that we don't talk enough in that, for example, with autonomous AI can be a force for good, right? It's these drivers are going to be safer than human beings. And those, we can take the 35,000 fatalities to 3,000 fatalities, et cetera. I do think that the AV is going to bring down the price of transportation. So a big part of our goal is to make on-demand transportation available for everybody. One of the folks that I was talking to was talking about how Uber has changed her mother's life. Like her mom can get around and just wouldn't get around without it, right? We want more moms like that. So I do think it's important to recognize that if fundamental transportation becomes safer, it becomes cheaper, going back to Jevons paradox, that's a good thing for society, right? I don't think that the answer as it relates to society is to try to slow down the pace of change because China won't, for example, if we're talking about the West. So I think you just have to lean into it. I think that discussions like this are important. I think you look for technology leaders who are talking about it. Dario, for example, Anthropic is talking about it, pissing some people off, but I think he's having good discussions there. And then I do think that the society arming up to be able to retrain large groups of people at scale is not a skill. I don't see people investing in that. And I don't see that as a core capability of any of our countries, et cetera. If there's one thing I can come up with, it would be that, is the retraining machine.
You've got 4 kids.
Yes.
They come to you, they say, Dad, listen, AI, robotics, give me some advice for my future. What should I be doing?
Work hard. You're going to be fine. Work hard. It's just, that's, I mean, now the AIs theoretically can work harder than you, but I find one of the pieces of advice I give to young people is don't plan. Okay, we went through our history. I wind up where I am today having not planned a thing. I didn't, when I was an investment banker, I wasn't dreaming of becoming CEO, et cetera. And what I find is that people who have too much of a career plan, who have too much clarity about what they're doing, they lose their curiosity. And human beings look for positive signal, right? You, whether you like it or not, anytime someone agrees with you, makes you feel a little bit better. Anytime you get signal that goes against your preconceived notions, either you ignore it or you're like, all right, shit, I'm gonna take this on. It's unpleasant. And so with career planning, what I find is people who have too clear career plan, they're looking for signals that feed into their career plan. I'm going to be a vice president by this much. I'm going to make X money by this much. And they're not looking around. They're not being curious. They're not looking for signal that can change, their life. And so what I tell some folks is like, before you go out and try to change a world, let the world change you first. Take input. And if you're like this, you got blinders because I'm going here, you're not going to take input. You're not going to take all the stimulus coming in from the world. So it's, the one constant I see is people who are good are good. People who are good. I've never seen a successful person in a job or a career get there without working hard. And my guess is, I don't know about you, you kind of wound up where you're wound up kind of by accident.
Yeah, I didn't expect
and people are like, well, you got lucky. I got very lucky to be here. Like, I had so many kind of moments, and some would say I took advantage of that of that luck. But to some extent, I was able to take advantage of that luck because I was open.
Being open, you jumped from Expedia to Uber, in part helped by some advice that our mutual friend Daniel Ek, the founder of Spotify, gave you. He's actually just texted me. I texted him saying, "Hey, can you send me a question to ask Dario?" But he said, "I'm in the middle of an
texting while we're talking." Damn it!
No, just before I walked in, I've just looked. He texted me back saying he's on an earnings call. Never mind. But he said, "Good luck with the interview." What did Daniel Ek say to you that helped you form that decision to go to Uber?
So he's the one who recommended. I think I was contacted by a headhunter. He recommended me to the headhunter who called me. I told him, I was actually at the Allen & Company conference going back in a circle with him, and we were having a drink one night. And he asked me, he's like, did the headhunter call you? There's this Uber role. And at the time, Uber was a disaster, like disaster. And everyone was reading about it. I was at Expedia. I had just gotten this wonderful contract that you said at the beginning. So I was going to stay. And I love working for Barry. We're like, it's been the best professional partnership of my life. And I said, of course I'm not going to go. I'm so happy about what I'm doing at Expedia. And Daniel looks at me. He's got his cold Scandinavian eyes. He's like, Dara, since when is life about being happy? It's about making impact. Uber is a great company, and you can have an impact on that company. You've got to do this. So the next day, I had called the headhunter previously. I said, no, I'm not interested. The next day, I called the headhunter, and I said, let's talk. So Daniel was the one who opened me up.
And your dad? He gave you advice?
Well, I talked to my dad, and my dad keeps things simple. And he said, Dara, in his Farsi, when a company who's a verb tells you to run it, you just say yes. So I thought that was good advice. And ultimately, I think people who come to Uber stay at Uber. They come because of the challenge, but they stay because of the impact. Like, we are building a company that is important to the world. And for me, I could come and I could have impact on an impactful company. So why the hell not?
And when he says a company that's a verb, he's referring to the fact that everybody in the taxiing or transportation category uses Uber as a verb, even if they're talking about a competitor.
Exactly right.
And there's always one company in every sort of industry that owns that.
Yeah.
We have a closing tradition here where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they're leaving it for. And the question left for you is, what is one conversation that if you could rewind time and have, you would have today but can no longer have?
It was a conversation with my dad. I told you I came to New York from San Francisco, and it was because my dad was getting very old and he was losing his mental facilities. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad I came back and I got to spend time with him. But those last times, when I spent time with him, it wasn't really him. And I wish I could talk to him about his experiences, his younger life, the excitement of building something, and then the loss and regrets he had in life as well. I never had, my relationship with him there was love, no question about love. But we didn't have the deep kind of conversations that certainly I'm hoping I get to have with my kids. So that's a conversation I'd love to have. And you can't get time back. And that's one of the tragedies of life, but it's also one of the beauties of life, which is there are some mistakes that you make that are permanent, and you can't get that back. But my then making genuine conversations with you and connections with my friends and having a real relationship, not just with my wife and my kids, but actually like with my workmates. Having those genuine conversations and connections is my way of correcting for the conversation I never had with my dad.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.